Of course, being a Wednesday, we can't close off the show without a discussion of your health. And as promised, today we want to take a look at the rights of the unborn. So allow me to introduce my panel, especially for our audience who are just joining us. Today, closer to me, I have Nyasha Chungore. She is a lawyer with the Center of Reproductive Rights Africa program. Of course, she's the legal mind here and certainly she'll help us understand the legality around it. And of course, Jedida Minor, she's the executive director of TICA. Now, TICA is a trust indigenous culture and health, and for them their core mandate and advocate is to sort of change the attitudes and the policies and the programs and power relationships in relation to sexual reproductive health. All right, ladies, it's so good to have you with us here this morning. Let's begin by perhaps, even for the sake of our audience and myself, the rights of the unborn. And Nash, being a lawyer, I'd love to begin with you. At what age or how many months, what do we consider unborn? Because a lot of this comes from the debate, especially social conversations when we're debating about abortion. When do you consider a fetus to be a human being? So that's why I'd love for us to begin with that.
Thank you so much for having us on the show. That is an interesting and very complex question that you ask. So from a very sort of basic understanding, when we're talking about unborn, I think we're talking about a fetus that has not yet been expelled from the womb. From the woman's womb in such a manner that it would be capable of surviving on its own outside the womb of the woman. However, legally, and as you rightly say, that these conversations tend to happen a lot around the rights, reproductive rights of women. There is no fixed legal definition of what the unborn child is, as it were, because this determination would be a legal determination in the fact of any specific case.
And that means that there will be a debate between legality and morality.
Yes, that is very true. So that is why I started off by saying a very basic understanding of what unborn means. To me, is that an unborn child is a fetus that has not yet been expelled from the womb of the woman that is carrying the fetus.
All right, so are there specific, unique rights that are well kept just for the unborn, and what are some of those rights? Could you just paint for me an image of that?
So in terms of rights, it all depends on the legal framework that any specific country has. This conversation for us in Kenya usually starts from the basis that Section 26(2) of our Constitution has provided, it says that life begins at conception. And this is often understood by some sectors to mean that this means that the unborn has rights from conception. Again, there's a whole legal conversation that goes into what does that mean and how do we talk about what particular rights, as it were, would accrue to a fetus whilst still within the womb.
All right. So, Jedida, here you are with your organization, TICA, which, you know, the Trust in Indigenous Culture and Health, and at the core of it is that you want to have a conversation with the adolescent and with girls and with women on their sexual reproductive health. What is sort of the attitude, especially towards, from women, from girls, when it comes to knowing the rights of the unborn, when it comes to knowing such information to make a better choice for tomorrow? What sort of attitude have you seen on the ground?
So in my work, what I've seen is that women and girls sometimes do want to have a pregnancy and to carry a pregnancy to term. As a woman and as a mother, I completely understand that need and that want, but I also do understand that sometimes women do get pregnant at a time that they do not want, and they are very much in conflict about what the law says and what the morality of what the society says about that.
Right.
What I am sometimes wondering is, we do know that when a fetus is in the womb is completely dependent on the life of the mother, and sometimes I'm in conflict on or not understanding why we would advantage the life of the fetus way more than that of the mother, even sometimes when the mother is suffering. We have seen cases of rape, we have seen cases of young children who have been defiled, sometimes in their home, and we do continue to force the girls to carry the pregnancy to term because we say that the fetus has a right, even way above of the person who's carrying the pregnancy.
And this is an entire moral conversation and debate, because then especially a lot of the people or the girls who have found themselves in the situation you've painted, rape for example, unwanted pregnancy, you didn't want it, you didn't plan for it, but at the same time taking away one's life morally is wrong. And number two, even legally, as even Nyash has also put it, that there's no specific age to what unborn is. And that person, that fetus, has as much of a right to life as you, the mother, carrying it. So in such a scenario,
can I
happens?
give us a little bit more context to
Please
that
do.
legally, Cindy? So, as I mentioned, this conversation for a lot of people usually starts with Section 26.2 of our Constitution. But what we must always bear in mind is there's also Section 26.4 of our Constitution.
Okay.
And Section 26.4 of our Constitution provides or permits abortion under certain circumstances in Kenya. And what this means is that under those specific circumstances allowed for and permitted by Section 26.4, women would be able to terminate a pregnancy if and the provision actually says, if in the opinion of a trained health professional, a particular pregnancy they are carrying would result in a threat to their life or to their health, or in an emergency situation, or if provided for under any other legal provision. So there is a balancing that needs to happen between fetal interest, which is what is provided for under Section 22, Section 26.2 of our Constitution, and women's health, which is provided for, and women's life, the interest to protect women's health and women's life, which is provided for under Section 26.4 of the Constitution. And those two provisions of the Constitution should always be read together, should never be read as conflicting, because they're not conflicting with one another. And so that is why it's very important that when we do have this conversation of what does Section 26.2 mean, we are very cognizant of the fact that there is 26.4, and those two should be read together.
And they complement each other.
And they complement each other.
All right, so Jadida, still on the moral aspect, having said that the organization really truly works with women and girls and adolescents, meaning you get to see it firsthand, let's talk about the attitude, because Nyasha here has clearly well painted out for us the legality of it. Let's deal with the morality of it. What sort of role does the church have to play? And not just the church, maybe religious institutes in general, the role and the attitude of religious institutes.
I find that in terms of moral, most of us are guided on our morality according to our religion. So be it we are Christian, or we are Muslim, or we are Hindu, or... So we need to be cognizant that all religions have a different definition on when life starts, even in the womb. There is the Christian definition that believes that I am a Christian myself, and we believe that life starts when maybe God blew life into Adam or Eve at the time. And at that, so we have different definitions or interpretations of religious text that then sometimes is in conflict. What I find is that we need to be cognizant that it's not just our religion that exists in the world. So yes, we can strongly believe on when our religion says that does happen, but we need to be respectful that that is not the only religion that exists, and what guides our moral compass might not guide others, and that's why we have the law. That's why I say we have our constitution, that then Nyasha was explaining, when it guides us to know when we can define this life happened and this life was terminated.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the statistics. Do we have numbers, Jadida, that perhaps that will paint for us this scenario and bring it closer to us here in Kenya, paint for us an image of how that is in Kenya? Do we have statistics of that?
In terms of statistics, we find that in 2012, APHRC, in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, did a study that showed that about 465,000 women did abortions in Kenya. I would want to say that probably this is an underestimate, because the reason we only know this is of the cases we are able to see in our healthcare facilities. When you work in the communities, you do see much more need or much more abortions happening. We work in the community where every time we will hear, you see that girl who was in the program, she's no longer coming. Why? Because she had an abortion and died, or she had an abortion and is now in hospital. And we do know that this, even the government right now is trying to mitigate this problem by opening wards that do cater for what we call post-abortion care. When women have needed abortion and have gone to what we call quacks, unqualified professionals or unqualified doctors, and get injured, they come to healthcare facilities, sometimes bleeding. Some of them bleed to death. Some of them have their uteruses removed. And these are cases that doctors see every day. Right now also the Ministry of Health is looking to develop guidelines on how to provide post-abortion care, because it's clearly a need. We know that we are spending $500 million per year to treat complications of abortion in the country. It's very grave.
I'm still on that number, 465,000 abortions annually.
Yeah.
From girls and adolescents and women around Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these women, do they get to survive that abortion, which you've just mentioned?
Yes. So the reason that the government is putting in place the post-abortion care is so that we can save women and we can save girls. But what we have seen is that about this number, about 2,000 of them die annually.
Do we know the biggest cause of them wanting to abort? Is it because they had a child due to rape circumstances, due to a health problem? Like, as we've rightly put it, sometimes a mother's life is at risk and abortion is needed to be done to save the mother's life. Do we know the causes, the majority of the causes of those abortions?
The causes in terms of what leads to an unwanted pregnancy or the need for an abortion is varied, but it's not well documented. What we do see, though, is that there is definitely a huge percentage of need for contraception that's not being met. We are seeing that our healthcare facilities currently not stocking methods of contraception. You have seen even stories on media in counties where people wash condoms because there are no condoms available. Right now, health is a devolved function. Some county governments are grappling with provision of budgets for reproductive health commodities. So women needing to be on contraception are not being on contraception. Another challenge that I find is that men are not being supportive partners. Very many times we hear that when a girl has fallen pregnant, a man will just say, how do I know it's mine? Or definitely it's not mine. And we let men go off the hook.
Right.
We do not hold men to account, but then the woman is left, as we say, carrying the baby.
Nyasha, just add on top of that, the role that a man has to play in this 465,000 abortions.
Indeed. So as Jadida has just explained to us, first of all, pregnancy, it takes two to tango.
Right.
So pregnancy is never,
a woman's
thing. It is an issue that has brought two people together. And a lot of the times when women reach a point where they need to make decisions about their ability or otherwise to carry a pregnancy to term, it usually has a lot to do with support to carry that pregnancy. But as Jade says, a lot of other reasons, such as, health-related reasons, the context in which they actually got pregnant, as we have referred to, just the levels, the epidemic levels of sexual violence in this country. It sometimes has to do with a whole range of issues that are about partner, community support, and also, the woman's circumstances at that particular time.
Right.
Yes.
Nyasha, Jadida did an amazing job when she painted out for us how quacks are also a problem into this. What is happening? What is the government doing to make sure that illegal abortion is brought down, or rather is completely erased, if that's possible, from the Kenyan society?
So what we need to do as a nation to ensure that we reduce the levels of unsafe abortions that happen in this country is, first of all, to ensure that there's enough information that is provided to women and girls, to society as a whole, on prevention of unintended pregnancies, on information around when I do have a pregnancy, what are the options available to me in terms of legally and within the health service sector to address my pregnancy. And what we find missing a lot of the times is that there's just very little information that's available. And as Jade has pointed out, there's also very little services that are available. So we have an unmet need for contraception. We have women going to health facilities, particularly young women going to health facilities and not getting the care that they require because sometimes of attitudes, stigma that comes with issues related to sexual and reproductive health, and the very fact that a young woman could be engaging in sexual intercourse and therefore they being unable to access the commodities they require to prevent unintended pregnancies.
And speaking of services, Jadida, is in a right scenario where if a girl got pregnant out of a rape situation, or if a mother's life is in danger and abortion is the only situation, in such a scenario, is abortion services in Kenya free? And if they're not, do you think they should be?
I think abortion services, just like any other services, should be free. It is unfortunate that the Ministry of Health passed guidelines for service provision, but immediately after withdrew them. What this has meant is that women have not been able to access services because there are no proper guidelines on how healthcare providers can provide this service within the law. There is a case in court trying to ask that the Ministry of Health reinstates these guidelines so that it is clear for women when they can access within the law. It's very vague. When you ask women if abortion is permitted in this country, they will tell you it's illegal. Well, abortion is not illegal, it's restricted. What this means is that it is legal in certain circumstances. It's very important that women know in what those circumstances are, because we are seeing a lot of harm when women don't know actually that they qualify for a safe abortion under the law.
And that's one of the things, women and girls knowing their rights and the information as well, that they have certain information. Do you think that women in Kenya are well conversant with their rights when it comes to, for example, abortion and rights of the unborn? Do you think that we are aware? Are we fully aware?
We are not aware. I find that every time you ask a woman, she's very scared. Even women who, like I just told you, there are post-abortion care services available, and there are guidelines that are being developed right now. Many women don't know this. And when they are in that time of emergency and needing a service, they will shy away from healthcare facilities. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, for example, is that miscarriage, which is also called spontaneous abortion, looks exactly like an abortion. And when women are miscarrying, you're pregnant, you see that blood is coming out, you're scared. Because you figure out if you showed up at a healthcare facility, you will be treated badly, and sometimes that's true.
Wow. That happens.
Yes.
The fact that you can appear for medical services as a woman and you're in a certain condition and you're not treated properly.
Yes.
Nyasha, what does the law say about that?
Well, the law, of course, talks about access to health services, including reproductive health services. So our Constitution provides for a right to health. And when we access health facilities, no matter what condition, we access health facilities with, we are entitled to receive quality health services. As Jade says, unfortunately, sometimes we do not always access quality health services. A lot that feeds into this, particularly within the realm of reproductive health, is stigma. The stigmatization of reproductive health services for women. And so, as Jade says, sometimes a woman will present at a health facility, and unfortunately, as a result of stigma that is pervasive within our societies, our health workers are part of our communities, that sometimes means that they are unable to access services as they require.
Hence, she can get the services that she needs.
Yes. Yes.
All right, then still on that same breath, when it comes to reproductive laws, are there any, this constitution, are there loopholes, are there legal loopholes that are there that needs to be sealed, and what are some of the solutions when it comes to reproductive health?
In terms of reproductive health, I think our constitution is extremely clear on what it provides for in terms of the right to health, including reproductive health, and in terms of, if we're speaking specifically to the issues around abortion. There is a lot of confusion, particularly when we're discussing issues around abortion and post-abortion care, as Jadida has already alluded to, because of a vagueness within the sector in terms of understanding how to implement the Constitution. As Jade referred to, the Ministry of Health came up with standards and guidelines in 2013. Unfortunately, these were withdrawn under circumstances that were not very clear. Our understanding is that this has resulted in a lot of confusion amongst the public and amongst health providers themselves in terms of what that withdrawal meant and how they should go about providing services in a way that does not put them in conflict with the law. And so what we tend to see is that this results in a chilling effect on health providers, that faced with a woman who requires a particular service, they tend to then shy away from providing the service because they're not clear, they don't have a very clear framework within which to operate, which is a problem. So these are some of the issues that need to be addressed in terms of having very clear guidelines on some of the issues that there is lack of clarity around in this country.
Nevertheless, constitutionally speaking, we are okay. It's just the implementation part of it that is a challenge.
Yes.
All right. So, Jadida, a lot of what I'm also hearing from the conversation is post-service, post-abortion service. What is and how does post-abortion service look like? What are we saying when we say post-service abortion?
So post-abortion care means that if a woman is going through an abortion, which sometimes is spontaneous, which is we know as miscarriage, or induced, meaning that she has done something to cause it or somebody else has done something to cause it, then it is not complete. She should be able to go to a healthcare facility and get help. This is a case of emergency. If a woman does not get help at that time, she could die. So the government has put in place services where women in need of service of post-abortion care can go and access service. It has looked in different ways for different women depending on what has already occurred, which mostly means the evacuation of the uterus, the removal of any remains of conception in her uterus.
All right. Yeah. Perhaps I want to believe, Jadida, that counseling is given prior and post-abortion, especially if it's done in the right condition, that it wasn't illegally done or it wasn't done by a quack, that counseling is one of the top priorities that is given to women and girls.
Yes. So in terms of a package that we call comprehensive abortion care, or CAC, what that implies is the complete package of pre-abortion counseling, having the service itself, or post-abortion care in case an abortion had started before they presented to the facility, and post-abortion care, and a contraception in place should the woman not want to get pregnant immediately after. If all these are taken into consideration and done well, we will see a huge reduction in the need for future abortions, which we find that because either the woman is treated so badly with such stigma, is not able to ask questions even when they are accessing post-abortion care. It means that sometimes when they do not want to get pregnant, they don't leave the facility with a method of contraception, or they do not get counseling immediately after they have had the service.
All right, ladies, let's close up the interview. Perhaps I'll begin with you, Nyasha, your closing remarks.
I think for me, I just wanted to say what is very important for us as a nation to continue to understand as we have these conversations around what Section 26(2) of our Constitution means, as we begin to have these conversations around the rights of women to access reproductive health services. We must always be cognizant of that fact, that our Constitution provides for both. Our Constitution is not in conflict with itself, and that there is a balancing that takes place between our fetal interests, our interest in protecting fetuses, and the rights of women to be able to access quality and comprehensive reproductive health services.
Right. Jadida?
I'd just like to ask the government, both national and county, to look into it and see that services are well available, and to just trust women and support women in the choices and in their reproductive health life.
Wow. Ladies, thank you so much for helping us and taking the nation through this sensitive topic. I've also personally learned a lot. There is no definition to unborn. I think that for me is the biggest take as well. So we can put like a timeline on what life is. Wow, thank you so much, ladies. Before we close up the show, let's take a quick commercial break. We'll come back.
This is KTN News.